I just went back from the sunken nightmare corpse city of Relais, and man, my fins are tired. We're here for a good time, we're here for a good time. If you're left wanting more after today's indescribable performance, join me for another eldritch episode of Nachorror, April 22nd, 3 PM Finnish time, twitch.tv/nachshow_fast. But first, here is Don't Listen to the Music of DJ Erich Zann by Nicky XX! So, the story that I'm reading today, Don't Listen to the Music of DJ Erich Zann. I was talking to my roommate about this story and the name of it, and we both felt like this is somewhat familiar, and I was unsure if I had heard of this particular story before, or if it was something similar, some thing called with a similar name. And when I googled it, I think I just wrote Music of Erich Zann or DJ Erich Zann or something like that. And it turns out that the reason I remembered it is because I've sometimes checked all the books by H.P. Lovecraft, and H.P. Lovecraft actually has a short story called Music of Erich Zann. So I haven't read that story myself personally, but because of that information, I am assuming that this is going to be kind of like a modernized version of a Lovecraft story. And obviously, Lovecraft is a very, very, very respected and loved horror writer, one of the most important horror writers, if not the most important horror writer ever. So I'm gonna be very interested in seeing how I can find those Lovecraftian feelings in this story. This is Don't Listen to the Music of DJ Erich Zann by Nicky XX. I need to find DJ Erich Zann, or more specifically, the DJ formerly known as Erich Zann. He's changed his name, his Spotify and YouTube, all his socials have been nuked. He's definitely left New York, but he's out there somewhere, making more of his strange, desynchronous, yet hypnotic music. Building a new fan base, luring them in, before a repeat of what happened at the Pussy House in Bushwick. I'm not gonna call it that for the story, by the way. Just to be clear. 29 people dead. An electrical fire, the investigators claimed. Faulty wiring. You know how it is with these poorly maintained, converted warehouses. A fire, the local news repeated. Fire was the story they were sticking to. If anyone from the FBI or the CIA or any shadowy X-Files agency knows any better, they aren't saying anything at all. Alright, actually, I'm gonna pause right here, just to, for people who might not be familiar with the idea of our NoSleep, is that, from what I gathered, and from what I remember, the idea with our NoSleep is pretty much writing stories that are not only horrifying and something that can cause you to lose sleep. Also, aside from horror stories, they also have stories that make you feel maybe empty inside sometimes. I've heard some of the stories are very, 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 very rough from that perspective. But aside from that, this isn't just horror stuff. Our NoSleep, the idea is also that the stories have to be kind of written from a perspective that it's as believable, or as it's supposed to kind of give the vibe that someone is actually writing it, and not just that it's a story or a novel that's written. Kind of the idea that it's someone is actually writing on Reddit about a thing that actually happened to them. They're trying to make it as realistic as possible, so from here you can notice mentions of Spotify and YouTube and all the socials, and directly talking to the Reddit by saying I need to find the DJ. A bartender buddy of mine, Andy, recommended me for the DJ Erich Zann gig. Dude, you up to work a concert in Bushwick? He texted me. A guy called last night, said he found my business card, but I'm already booked on the Lower East Side. Pays $100 for the night, plus tips. Really small gig, shouldn't be much work. I said I'd do it. I recognized the address. The We need to, okay, chat, we need to find a name that we're going to call this place the censored place, because I'm not going to call it just the P, or I'm not going to call it the Pussy House like I said earlier. We need to come up with a good name for the place. The P. The P House. The Prussians. The Precinct. The Precinct is really good, actually. I'm gonna go with the Precinct for now. The Precinct was an old warehouse at the ass end of Bushwick, wedged into a corner between the Queen's County border and the cemetery, surrounded by other abandoned warehouses, tagged up with metal-roofed awnings and those huge roll-up doors you see on industrial properties. The owners had rewired and redesigned the inside to be rented out for art shows, concerts and club nights. Andy sent me a photo of the event's promotional flyer. It was shiny black with childlike drawing of a stick-figure girl leading a huge fluffy monster on a leash. The design appeared cute at first glance, but the longer you looked at it, the more disturbing it became. The monster's crudely drawn human face was too large for its body. Its toothy mouth seemed less friendly smile than a threatening sneer. DJ Erich Zann, 10 PM. The description of the place kind of reminds me of like some movies that I've seen, like the old warehouse. It's like the way they describe the old warehouse here with the metal roofed awning and huge roll-up doors you see on industrial properties. I'm kind of getting like when I think about like an old warehouse, I'm not getting like a city warehouse. This is written from a New York perspective, obviously, and my experience is like growing up in a little village, so that'll change my perspective of what this is like. But what I'm kind of like getting in my head is like this wooden shed, like a big wooden storage warehouse type shed with that metal roof that is like all wiggly and stuff, and just like the sliding door being like this big wooden thing that you need to hold on both hands to even open. Just the vibe that I was getting. I spent some time internet stalking DJ Erich Zann. The guy played up the mystique for sure. I found only one photo of the DJ himself, and it wasn't a particularly revealing one. Just a man in a Cthulhu mask and a turtleneck standing behind a soundboard with long sleeves and gloves on his hands. I clicked into his YouTube. DJ Erich Zann, the profile read, "We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity." I wonder if that is a direct Lovecraft quote. It could be. HP I swear I didn't read. Sorry, I swear I didn't read forward to the next line. I was just concentrating on that line completely. Well, that does sound like Lovecraft. H.P. Lovecraft. He'd also stolen his stage name from an H.P. Lovecraft story. Adorable. Alright. Yeah. So it isn't just a decision for the name, they're actually commenting on the facts. Okay. I hit play on a video titled Asenath 14. 25,000 views, 1,500 likes, comments disabled. The music started slow and low, pounding bass over a hazy, barely perceptible electronic rumble. On the video screen, against an empty background, bits of white light swirled and exploded and pulled back together, then split into pulsating stars in primary colors. A trilling instrumental melody stretched over the repetitive bass line, rising and falling and shooting into a million different directions as the colorful stars on screen spun like pinwheels, light blending and shifting and modulating before a frenetic piping overcame the instrumental tapestry. Ooh. It's a nice description. Wow, 50% off! Bill's better secondhand furniture post-Labor Day sale! I muted my laptop as an ad replaced the hypnotic EDM melody, as an F14 had been really short. Except it wasn't. Asenath 14 was 33 minutes 45 seconds long. I frowned, no way I'd listened to that song for over half an hour. Alright, I like where it's going, I called the number Andy gave me, no one picked up. So around 8:30 I walked from the train station to the precinct? What was I calling it? The precinct. The P location. Down an alley to the back parking lot and employee entrance. There was clearly something going on. I could hear the thud, thud, thud of electronic bass. But unlike every other time I'd worked the venue, there were no roadies trudging in and out with heavy equipment. There were no people around at all. No cars in the parking lot either, except for one camper van. That in and of itself wouldn't be surprising, plenty of touring musicians live out in vans. But this one was odd because it was completely blacked out. I'm not talking about tinted windows. Someone had taken the effort to cover every spot where light might seep through with opaque, dull black material. Assholes committed to the aesthetic, I thought. Even stranger, the rolling door of the loading dock was still closed and locked, as was the employee door. There was a handwritten sign posted there. Absolutely no entry until 10 PM. My next thought was the one that, in a roundabout way, saved my life. I went, screw that, upside down, backwards, and sideways. I went, or I thought, because if you say that out loud, that would be really fucking funny to hear from a person. The promo flyer said that the event started at 10 PM, which meant the moron who'd posted the sign assumed I'd be able to set up a full bar while dealing with a line full of guests wanting to get liquored up before the show. Lucky for me, I'd poured wine at the gallery pop-up at the P 2 weekends before, and I'd forgotten to return the key. The way the P is set up, the bar is in a separate, smaller back room connected to the showroom by a squat hallway. The employee door opened into the back room, where I found my crates of liquor already deposited on top of the bar. The throbbing bass line I'd heard outside emanated from the showroom, rhythmic and looping. I saw moving shadows. I assumed the tech guys were all in there. I got to work organizing bottles as the last of the summer evening light faded to darkness, bass booming in my head, guiding my movements like a conductor. An hour later, I had to pee. I didn't want to annoy the roadies or piss off whoever didn't want me in the P before 10, but the venue's only bathrooms were in the showroom, and the building was isolated amongst the sea of empty warehouses, and my only other option was to whip it out in the parking lot. Alright, sorry that I laughed. I'm just, you have to pee, and whoever didn't want me in the pee before the 10. Before 10. Oh boy. That letter and the way I'm calling it now is very unfortunate for the story. So I went. At the end of the hallway, I froze. There were figures setting up the stage, but they weren't roadies. They were pitch black automatons shaped like naked, featureless, sexless humans. Mannequins at the mall become animate. The skin looked the consistency of clay. They moved fluidly, more organic than robotic. There were 6 of them, each had arms and legs and, in lieu of a head, a cube-shaped protuberance emitting small peals of grey smoke as they lifted crates of lights and arranged amps on the main stage. Okay, anyone else feel like that kind of happened out of nowhere? It might be because of the way that I'm reading, obviously. But does anyone else feel like that's kind of like you explain this like work scenario that the person is going through. Oh, I have to go take a piss. So I went, then I froze, and figures and blam. It's kind of like, yeah, it happened really like out of nowhere. Which I'm not sure how I feel about that personally. Like, something in my head is saying that this is kind of like, it almost sounds like comical or, like, instead of having this build up to what is happening, it just happens, sort of, you know? Like you're going through there, like maybe personally, if I'd wanted this to be more horrifying, I would have perhaps explained the sounds a bit more, or seeing the shadows move and maybe commenting on the movement of the shadows a bit. Then again, this is more kind of a jarring stop, which might make it more spooky. I don't know how I feel about it actually. But yeah, that's a very quick turn. Going straight from a normal night, just setting up everything, to these cube-headed robotic clay monsters or whatever. I yelped, I backpedaled, my foot caught on something, I stumbled, a weight gave way and the music stopped. I realized the looped bass line had come from a laptop plugged in on the floor. I tripped over it, I'd hit a button or two, I'd killed the music. Metal framing was dropped. The soundboard hit the elevated stage with a hollow thud. Everything the clay-like, pitch-black humanoid faux roadies had been carrying fell to the ground, as the faux roadies themselves melted, like butter in a pan, into gelatinous black puddles. That's a very quick entrance for the story to go there. After the pee incident, I need to find a better name for this place. Well, anyways, I'm just gonna go with the pee incident, but if anyone in chat comes up with a better idea for the place's name, then please give me something. After the pee incident, after that night, I scoured the internet for people who knew DJ Erich Zann. People who could explain to me who he really was, or who he'd been before he was DJ Erich Zann. He kinda just appeared on Spotify in 2021, one Redditor wrote. I thought he was an AI, said another. Didn't he die in a fire at a concert in Brooklyn? Asked yet another. I don't know, maybe start there. His family must have said something. His family, if they existed, hadn't uttered a word. I'd scoured the internet for an actual photograph of DJ Erich Zann, or even a recording of his voice, and came up with nothing. Finally, user Greg87 direct messaged me. DJ Erich Zann was my roommate, he wrote. I'll be in New York City next week for Tech Week. I can tell you everything. Alright. Now here's a nice test for a Reddit story. Because so far the storyteller, they've only said like one Redditor or another one wrote, but now they said a Redditor name. I wanna check if that is an actual Reddit page. I don't think there is a user called Greg87. Missed opportunity if it doesn't exist. Yeah, it kinda sucks, like I'm so surprised that it doesn't. Well, anyways. Unfortunate. Greg87 is a real guy with a real name and a family and life in Pasadena, California, but for privacy purposes I'll refer to him here as simply Greg. Greg is an aerospace engineer with a master's degree. I'm sorry, but you're already given too much information about the guy. For privacy purposes. There is a guy called Greg in Pasadena, California, who's a real guy, and 87 is presumably his birth year. There is this guy who he has information of and says he's his roommate, and also aside from that, he's an aerospace engineer with a master's degree. You've already told everything. There is no privacy left here. Oh. Anyways, we met at a quiet coffee shop in Williamsburg. He'd known DJ Erich Zann while they were both college students in the late 2000s. James Hadley, Greg told me. That's his real name. James Hadley and Greg shared a Pasadena apartment, a few blocks from the university they both attended during Greg's senior year of college. James, though a year younger, was already 3 years into a PhD program in theoretical physics. I actually thought at one point that I wanted to study theoretical physics. Then I realized it's too theoretical. The residential situation had been arranged by University Student Services. For half a semester, Greg said it felt more like living with a skittish cat than another adult. James spent every moment he wasn't on campus barricaded in his room, working through equations or practicing his electric violin with headphones in. Whenever he inadvertently found himself in the same room with Greg, he'd lower his eyes and scurry away like a cockroach in the night. The way I'm reading this is that the way he scurried was actually on like 4 legs and low to the ground like a cockroach. Never mind, he grew more legs to walk like a cockroach. Greg felt sorry for him. He made it his mission to befriend his reclusive roommate, approaching the task as one would set about domesticating a feral pet. Greg stopped studying in his room. Instead, he'd arranged himself on the couch in the common room, hook his laptop to the TV and play old Star Trek episodes as background noise. On the rare occasion James emerged from his room, Greg would invite him to sit and watch. At first, James might linger for a few minutes, then he'd start sitting down beside Greg. Finally, after a month of warming up, he brought own work into the common room so they could study together. When that became comfortable, James, at long last, began to speak. Alright. I don't think that the guy, James or DJ Erich Zann, like, the way they're describing this about theoretical physics shit and that stuff, I don't think... I'm gonna predict that DJ Erich Zann isn't the issue here. Like, he's not a entity doing horrible things or anything like that. It's pretty much just the music doing it. And he's kind of like the victim of the music. That is what I'm gonna go for that so far in the story, but just based on the vibes of the character, the fact that he became more comfortable and actually started talking and shit like that. It was school stuff at first, Greg told me. His area was string theory unification, universe building stuff, the interchange between particle physics and a potential tapestry of infinite planes. I'm not even sure I can explain it correctly. Eventually though, I got him to open up about his life outside his research. You know, his family. That was actually exactly one of the things that I wanted to study when I was studying physics, like well, theoretical physics in general, but I was really interested in getting like more close with string theory stuff. But honestly, at that point, it was mainly just because I had just read The Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking. And it was very interesting to me, but I know that I could have never actually gotten that far. It's an intense amount of work. James Hadley had been the beloved only child of successful parents. When they'd realized the 7-year-old could solve advanced algebraic equations and play Mozart on the violin, they lobbied James's small private academy to skip him from 2nd grade to 7th. Okay, Jesus. He excelled both academically and musically, but his relationship with other children was a source of anxiety. The bigger boys in the neighborhood bullied him for being weird, while his preteen classmates treated him as more spectacle than friend. Actually, yeah, fuck it. I'm just gonna say it right now. The parents were actually actual pieces of shit for doing that. Actual fucking monsters. Just... Oh, this is our little child showing showing possible signs of autism. What would be the best thing to do here? I know, let's make sure that he's as far away and as different from the people around him as possible. That won't backfire. Just... Oh, it's like... the kid just goes like, yeah, I really like maths and I like physics and yeah. Is there a need for social growth as well? I think there might be. I wanna play with my friends. No, fuck you, 2nd grader. You're not going to play with your Bakugans and everything. You're gonna go straight to 7th grade. You know, the time when the people are the worst. sorry. I'm not getting over that part. These parents wanted their kid to like be bullied to a fucking highest level ever. How old are second graders? Wait, okay, we need to do more research. This is a research stream now. How old is second grade USA? No way, no. Is that true? Okay, elementary school is kindergarten through 5th grade. From ages 5 to 10. So you would be like 7 years old in second grade. So you would be going from, as a 7-year-old, to hang out in school with 12 and 13-year-olds. That is the worst thing ever. I feel so bad for the... And this is verifying my theory that there is no fucking way, not a snowball's chance in hell that he was the monster. It's the way that he's been treated. Yeah, skipping the 7th grade will fuck you up more than any eldritch being. Exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly. That's so awesome. These parents are so bad. I'm sorry, I got too stuck in that. It's just so funny to me. Finally, his parents pulled him out of school altogether. Wait, we fucked up here. Maybe our child shouldn't go and hang out with people at the worst time when they're the biggest bullies, biggest assholes, biggest South Park like ass fans of the entire age group. I wonder what we could do after he's traumatized by that. What if we pull him out entirely from social circles? Wow, okay, I want to meet these fucking parents. Oh, you just know these rich fucks, oh my god. Finally his parents pulled him out of school altogether. His mother, a professor at Cal State LA School of Education, taught him at home until age 13. James was accepted into a prestigious university. This is the reason why you shouldn't allow homeschooling for children. For fuck's sake. His mom and dad switched off driving him to and from college, even after he finished undergrad and began his PhD coursework until that year. That year, his parents both died. His mother in March after a long battle with breast cancer, his father in July from a sudden heart attack. Without them, James felt alone in the world. They weren't just family, they'd been his cheerleaders, his most enthusiastic supporters. His only friends. I wonder why. Just to be clear here, I wanna be perfectly clear at this moment. I am not saying that this is badly written. I don't think it's badly written at all. There are people who are this dumb, who logic their way into believing that this would have been the right thing to do for their child. I'm not saying the writing is bad, it is just really funny to me how dumb you can be as a parent. I am completely aware that there are parents like this weird ass I don't know if helicopter parent is the right term even in this, not necessarily. But like these parents that are like that they explain like, oh yeah, our kid is such a smart boy, he'll get along so well with older people, and then be like, fuck, that didn't work, I don't know what to do. Homeschooling, we can do that somehow. I can understand how it happens in a person's head, like the logic to get there, even though they're completely wrong and they shouldn't fucking do that ever. The social growing is such an important part of education. I'd argue that like growing socially is way more important for a child, for an adult, for anyone, than learning the things in school, like learning the basic things. I think social growth is the most important part, especially of early years in school. True, and it can also be an ego thing for the parents. Yeah, exactly, yeah. I don't know how to live in society, James admitted to Greg. Wait, let me say that in Joker voice. I don't know how to live in society, James admitted to Greg. I want friends. I'm not gonna keep doing that. I want friends of my own age. I wanna go to parties, to socialize, to find my people. I just can't. How about music? Greg asked him. Maybe try and find a band to play with. James took that advice to heart. He bought himself a guitar and practiced in garages with stoners he met on Craigslist, but it wasn't a fit. The guy wasn't built to be a rocker. He was too self-conscious, too anal. A black hole of charisma. Then Greg had an epiphany. Electronic music was still relatively niche then, still geeky. James was intrigued. A cousin of Greg's bought Pro Tools to mess with as a hobby, then lost interest. Greg convinced him to sell his entire setup to James at a discount. Every poo-poo is pee-pee time, but not every pee-pee time is poo-poo time. Can you explain that, Bats? As a DJ, he could play a character, Greg explained. He could venture out into the world, be the life of the party, surround himself with people without bursting his bubble. And it worked. It worked better than Greg could have ever imagined. James, a musical prodigy with technical skills, took to Pro Tools like a duck to water. The ability to produce sounds no human voice or human hands could produce, for him, was the purest form of creation. His music blended sounds and rhythms together that shouldn't have mixed, yet did, into hypnotic harmonies that transfixed listeners. Greg connected him to high school buddies at other LA universities. Soon, James had built a small following and a solid side hustle as a frat party entertainer. He went through a few names: DJ Schrodinger, Starboy XJH, Majorana Fermion. It should have stayed that way, Greg said wistfully. I thought he was happy, but James always wanted more. One night, Greg was studying at a friend's house when he got a text from James. Come home now, the text read, but with 20 exclamation points. Greg did as he was told. When he arrived, he found his usually restrained roommate bouncing around like an excited puppy. You have to see this, he exclaimed, dragging Greg into his room and shutting the door. He turned out the lights, typed a few keys on his computer, and closed his eyes as music flowed forth. There was a recorder piping over a string quartet, over a brass band, over a bass line that sounded like train approaching. Greg said, I thought I heard screaming cats in there somewhere too. All the different melodies came together, then broke apart, then curved. Can music curve? Mesmerized, Greg eventually realized he was no longer in James's room. They were outside. He felt the warm air against his face. On an alien planet with a rich maroon sky, obsidian black tundra stretched forever into the distance on all sides, dotted with throbbing golden orbs emitting the feeling of rough sandpaper. James stood there with him and, before them, a black swamp bubbled. Tar-like globules crawled out like snakes to a snake charmer or flowers to the sun. They reached with wormy black tendrils towards the music and began to sway in time with the rhythm. That's neat. That is really neat. Let me read that again. Sorry, I want to internalize that that is such like a cosmic horror ass picture in my head. Mesmerized, Greg eventually realized he was no longer in James's room. They were outside. He felt the warm air against his face. On an alien planet with a rich maroon sky, obsidian black tundra stretched forever into the distance on all sides, dotted with throbbing golden orbs. Throbbing golden orbs emitting the feeling of rough sandpaper. James stood there with him, and before them a black swamp bubbled. Starlight globules crawled out like snakes to a snake charmer, or flowers to the sun. They reached with wormy black tendrils towards the music and began to sway in time with the rhythm. That is really, 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 really cool. Just the whole thought is like do you remember Nemesis Moon knows the game Dagon? Like the way you walk on the tar, like it's kind of like just this black mass of like oily substance or like tar-like substance that you walk on. It's giving me a lot of those vibes, you know? Black swamp with bubbles, the golden orbs not necessarily related to that, but just the whole idea of this like obsidian black tundra is a great description of the way that I would describe that moment in Dagon. Like a seafloor raised up. Exactly, yeah, like a black seafloor. Yeah, exactly. Actually, now that you mention like seafloor, that really fits with the golden orbs emitting like rough sandpaper as well. Like they could be like coral balls or something like that. Let's get back into the question at hand though, before I continue the story, since we're, I believe, almost at halfway, or actually past halfway. How do you guys feel about the story? There were moments in the story where I was kind of taken away from its, just by, like, behavior, maybe. Of, like, I don't know, for a short while I was a bit unsure about the way the parents behaved, but then I just remembered that, some parents are just way worse than I have ever seen, even though I've seen some bad parents. Still thinking what to think. Yeah, kind of the same with me. I do love that they took a very like cosmic horror approach to this, and I'm very interested in seeing how they're gonna do it. The cosmic horror aspect, it's always pretty hard to do. Like, I feel like sci-fi in general is very difficult. I think cosmic horror might be slightly maybe easier than sci-fi to write in general, because you don't necessarily have to know the specific theory. You can still like create this like the feeling of like sublimity and obscurity, just in the vastness of it all. It's like you don't necessarily have to understand the actual thing, you just have to understand what feeling you're trying to evoke. And I feel like it's working pretty well so far. I think it's been good so far. The mannequin thing happened kind of fast. Yeah, I think the mannequin part might have been my maybe least favorite part so far of the entire story. Like, I didn't necessarily have a big problem with the visuals itself or anything like that, just the fact that it happened so fast. It is something like if they saw the tar figures or the clay figures or whatever they are, if they showed it like here, and before this he maybe said something like, I don't know, when going for the stage, I thought I saw a slug-like figure going behind the curtain, and then it was gone. Never seen again. I don't know, something a bit more, not so blatant, that there's just a stage that you go on and you just clearly see the things and you describe them clearly. Maybe that is also kind of the problem that I have in this kind of a horror story when that happens, especially that, like, out in the open, is kind of like, well, I joke about how Lovecraft kind of does this thing of like, the thing I am now talking about is beyond description. Here is the description, and then he actually describes, like, people talk about how much Lovecraft like talks about indescribable things, but I feel like often people forget that he also really describes the indescribable things at some points, to a huge level. And I feel like in this case it could have been better to maybe not even completely describe what they were seeing in such a specific way as they did, like square heads and humanoid figures and everything like that. Like if they were describing and the stage was like dark or something. Okay, here is an idea of, like, obviously I'm not a writer, I'm not trying to tell a person who is definitely a better writer than me. I don't want to like give advice or anything like that. It's just like the way that I feel I would have written it instead would be something along the lines of like, as I walked past the stage to take my break, and I noticed from the corner of my eye some movement, When I stared at the stage, I saw this... The lights were not on, and it was difficult to see what was happening, but I am aware that I saw some movement. It didn't seem like there was a figure per se, but the darkness seemed deeper at parts, moving in a different way. And as fast as I noticed it, when I took a step closer, it was gone. Something along those lines, like pretty much saying like there's darkness moving in the darkness. Like deeper darkness because of the tar figures or the black clay figures. I feel like that would be more like hidden and more unsure, and you could build more from that, like to the future of the story. I've read like certain stories who do that kind of stuff, and I really like that, like the character not being completely clear about what is described. Well, with Lovecraft, it's like a best guess, like the closest approximate thing. You mean like the way that Lovecraft describes things indescribable in his stories? There is no real way to describe this thing, but just so that you can have something in your mind other than the indescribable, here is something that I can offer you. Yeah, I guess, yeah. Yeah, I'd say so, yeah. I felt maybe like in the Mountains of Madness, I kinda heavily felt that feeling of like in that he's like describing like geometry in a pretty damn clear way. That story sucks in my opinion. Yeah, yeah, I kinda agree. I don't like In the Mountains of Madness that much, yeah. Hot take, but I don't know how long it lasted, Greg said. Time meant nothing. Then I was back in James's room, balled up on the floor. As soon as the room stopped spinning and Greg regained his ability to speak, he demanded James tell him what he'd done to them. James grinned from ear to ear. The promise of string theory, he said. I manipulated matter with my music. I changed our vibrations, I took us to another dimension. Shit, James, Greg stammered. What if we couldn't get back? Or if we got hurt or something? James smiled wider. You don't need to worry about that. We're ghosts there, nothing could touch us. Greg had to admit, the experience of transporting himself to another dimension through music had been cool. That is a nice description, Greg. You are seeing something indescribably horrifying and magnificent, and your thought is pretty cool. Soon James incorporated interdimensional tourism into his life sets. What? Okay. He conjured up bubbly pink jungles with cute flying felines, or forests full of multicolored plants and bugs that resembled the drawings of sugar-high kindergartners, or stark, rocky seashores where blood-red waves met a blanket of thick blue snow. He gained himself a reputation among Southern California sorority girls and underground EDM fans as the DJ whose music could generate hallucinations without drugs. Once again, I don't know how I feel about that. Interdimensional tourism into his live sets. Cute flying felines made me think of Nyan Cat immediately, so fucking true. Literally a thing that you would see if you were tripping balls at a gig or something. Yeah, Okay, the way this is described here in the story, I'm gonna think about this part right here. I'm gonna think about this part more like, I'm going to say that interdimensional tourism into his live sets is pretty much like something that it would be easier to explain out as either visual effects on the gig, or just like, oh yeah, you can get there without drugs, wink. If you said I'm going to give people experiences of interdimensional tourism, you wouldn't stay as an underground EDM fan, and The Secret or whatever would definitely not fit with sorority girls. It would have been enough for this dude to just write Erich Zann on Google to just like get the information out of that. To be fair, I'm actually gonna refute that point immediately now that I thought about it more, considering that he's discovered a way to use music to affect the wavelengths of atoms pretty much. I don't see a reason why he couldn't remove his existence from a lot of things that he wouldn't want people to say maybe in the future. Like, if he gets better at making his music, he could use the music to just remove things that are known about him completely. Maybe? It seems like he has superpowers, is what I'm trying to say. James should be happy, yet still, he wasn't satisfied. On a rainy winter night, Greg returned home late. He heard violin music emanating from James's room. The song was fast and frenetic, jumping around from high octaves to low, jarring and nerve-rattling. Tired and annoyed, Greg went straight to James's room and shoved open the door. Lights flashed from his computer, which James was connected to via his headphones. Acoustic violin at his chin, James's hands danced like dying spiders, racing up and down the neck of the instrument. His eyes stared straight ahead, bloodshot and unthinking. On his face an expression of unspeakable pain and horror. Greg ran to him and pulled off his headphones, accidentally dislodging them from their jack in the process. Music. The music that had driven his roommate to his current state filled the room, and Greg himself tugged violently into James's nightmare. They were trapped in an endless cave, illuminated only by a greenish glow. Metallic spikes, jagged stalagmites covered the walls and ceiling and floor, jutting out as though to impale prey. A milky white substance, the consistency of glue, moistened the spikes like saliva. A grey thing lurked behind James. A faceless man made of grey liquid steel, bubbling and dripping and recongealing. Its arms wrapped around its waist, leaving his arms free to fiddle like a madman. It bent its hulking form, head over James's head, lips locked to his temple, as though it were drinking him. Ugh. The funny thing about this is that I'm seeing some old creepypasta memes here. Like in old creepypastas, there was this kind of like a meme or a cliche that happened in all the stories. When people didn't want to describe a creature attacking someone or something, they would always say stuff like thing, the being, the monster, stuff like that. They always said, like, usually I think it was thing and the being or something like that. It was like just a random moment where they would just say something like, and he was walking down the street from school, but he didn't know he was followed by the being. And it's just like out of nowhere, just a being is now present the thing. And the grey thing here just kind of reminded me of that. Not a criticism of the writing at all, it just reminded me of like old Mitch. Creature! That's the word! Kahvini, thank you! Kahvini, thank you so much! Creature is the word! Yeah! Absolutely. Absolutely. But the creature was already there. It was always like teens writing stories, yeah. But no, it's definitely not a thing here, because they just say a grey thing and then describe it perfectly, like, in a beautiful way. Not criticizing the story, just gave me some flashbacks into the good old days. I will definitely read some of those stories in the future as well. Greg froze, so disturbed by the liquid steel monster, he didn't immediately notice the small creature's sniffing at his feet. It was a thing the size of a puppy and the shape of a hamster, resembling a sentient steel wool sponge. It opened a mouth much too large and flashed dripping grey teeth like the surrounding stalagmites. It stared up at Greg with gelatinous yellow eyes. Then the world spun. Everything went black. Greg woke sometime later, sprawled on the floor of James's room behind his desk, surrounded by silence. A trickle of blood dripped down his forehead. He pulled himself to his knees and fell against the wall, eyes clenched shut, grasping for a timeline. James got stuck in another dimension. Greg heard the music. He went there too. They were supposed to be ghosts. Nothing was supposed to touch them, but something did. A creature of molten metal, and it attached itself to James. Greg passed out. As he fell, his body slammed against James's computer, cutting the music and launching them back into their appropriate reality. James. Where was James? Greg forced his eyes open. James lay on the ground. Near him, I assume. Breath shallow, eyes wide and distant. Greg crawled to him. James's lips moved. 1,000, he muttered. 1,000. 1,000. Then he fell quiet and his eyes finally closed. Greg couldn't wake his roommate. He dragged him to bed, wrapped him in blankets and watched him for hours, terrified he'd stop breathing. Finally, exhausted, Greg fell asleep in James's desk chair. When he awoke the next morning, James was gone. He found his roommate in the kitchen, brewing a pot of coffee, smiling. "What the heck, James?" Greg stammered. "Last night, what was that?" James eyed Greg strangely. Nothing happened last night? I've no idea what you're talking about." Greg gaped. His mouth hole, not the other one. He reached up and felt the welt over his eyes, scraped off dried blood just to remind himself he hadn't dreamed the entire thing. "Your violin playing," he insisted. "The cave with all the spikes, the metallic lava man eating you, the steel wool guinea pig? You don't remember any of this?" James shrugged. "Get a therapist, man. I think you're hallucinating." Nemesis. Breath shallow, eyes wide, mom spaghetti. This is just the plot of 8 Mile 2, also known as 16 Mile. As he turned his back, Greg saw an odd mark on James's neck, a bruise the size of a hickey, grey and shiny like a smudge of silver metallic paint. After that day, James became a different person. Wallflower James, who lived in sweats and anime t-shirts, began wearing polos and styling his dirty blonde hair. Shy James all of a sudden attracted an entourage of frat boys who'd carry his DJ equipment and chill with him at the dive bars. James, who'd previously spent his free nights reading pulp sci-fi and commenting on classical violin blogs, cultivated a Facebook wall full of photos from drunken club nights, his arms draped around inebriated girls in short dresses. Virgin James, who couldn't look a woman in the eye without blushing, now texted Greg 3 times a week to stay out of the apartment, because James would be occupied there with a one-night playmate. "I should have been supportive, I guess," Greg admitted. "I've been trying to lure him out of his comfort zone, but that cocky womanizer with bottle service, he wasn't James." It was nearly May by then, and Greg hadn't been accepted into MIT for a master's program, or had been accepted into MIT for a master's program. He'd also begun dating his future wife. With finals looming and his roommate inflicted with douchebag brainworms, he was more than happy to spend his days in the library and his nights with his girlfriend. "I'd basically moved out already," he said. Then he sighed. "A professor of mine lent me a book and I'd forgotten about it. I want to return it before the school year ended." Determined to collect the borrowed book, Greg reluctantly returned to the apartment he shared with James. For the last time, he promised himself. But as he approached the door, he felt and heard similar rumbling of an EDM bass line. "Great," Greg thought. "He must have a lady friend over." To save himself from an unsolicited porn soundtrack, he hooked his headphones up to his iPod and blasted 90s hip-hop as he unlocked the door. Quick as he could, he located the book under a pile of menus, then did a round on the commonplace, picking up random odds and ends as he didn't want to leave behind. Then, Party Up by DMX was interrupted by a woman's scream. Greg acted on instinct. He ran to James's room and forced his way through the locked door. In the process, his earphones were torn from his ears, and James's music dragged him, kicking and screaming, into oblivion. He was back in the subterranean cave with the jagged spikes and the ghostly greenish glow. The spikes, ever so slowly, moved. By the way, I love the alliteration here. Ghostly greenish glow. Love it. Curled and extended, refracting the hazy green light into colors and shades Greg couldn't describe with words. The milky white glue substance extended from the spikes to from spike to spike like a spiderweb, dripping down in thick globules. And James was there. He stood stock still, the faceless grey liquid steel man behind him, embracing him. Moist metallic tentacles wrapped around his head and legs and torso, gripping his neck and face like long-fingered hands. Bleeding into his skin, enveloping him like a defective superhero suit. The grey man was James. James was the grey man. His eyes were wide, bulging, and empty. There was a shuffle at his feet. Greg looked down and doubled over with nausea. What was left of a brown-haired young woman lay on the ground. Her throat had been torn out, her head folded back unpleasantly, unspooled muscles and tendons splayed like streamers. Twitch streamers! The creature buried itself in her chest. In a gruesome second, Greg recognized the thing as the steel wool hamster, now the size of a Rottweiler. Its metal fur curled menacingly like a tangle of barbed wire. It jerked upwards, turned its large face towards Greg. Its putty yellow eyes glowed with malice. It clutched a hunk of red meat between jagged teeth. With a turn of his stomach, Greg realized the chunk of flesh was the dead girl's heart. Ugh. Some gore into it. The creature had tossed its head, swallowing the heart whole. Then it redirected its rabid attentions towards Greg. It lunged. Greg, in a fit of survival instinct, grabbed his earbuds and forced them into his ears. James's reality-altering EDM creation was blocked out by DMX. Oh, that is so fucking good. James's reality-altering EDM creation was blocked out by DMX is one of the best sentences I've ever heard in a horror story from our NoSleep or any other place. Reality-altering EDM versus DMX. It's just that, you know that meme that's a conservative share of the soldier with the shield covering over a child with a rainbow coming at him or whatever? It's like that meme and it's James's reality altering EDM is the rainbow and the shield is DMX. Oh my god, if someone can make that meme or any other kind of meme similar to that, I would fucking love to see that. The steel wool monster gnashed its teeth angrily, pressed up against an infinite force field, restrained like a dog on a chain. Greg turned up the volume on his iPod. He knew he didn't have much time. Avoiding the living spikes, he found his way to James's computer. He tore wire, slammed the laptop against the wall, kicked and stomped and smashed the expensive soundboard until he was reduced to a shattered hunk of plastic and rubber and metal. Finally, he pulled out his earphones. He'd returned to James's room. The air smelled like pennies, with an underscent of sulfur. The girl's destroyed body rested in a pool of blood and entrails. And of course, there was James. James lay on his back, bloodshot eyes wide and unblinking. As Greg stood over him, he barely seemed to breathe, his chest contracting weakly under a pit-stained tank top. Greg saw a new marking on his arm, a long blue-grey bruise, like the hickey on the back of his neck. It caught the light like rusting metal. His lips moved. He forced out words. 995 more. Greg fled the apartment. He banged on a neighbor's door, called the police. The cops arrived to find the young woman dead on the bedroom floor. James had disappeared. Man, alright. Alright, we're getting really into the story right now. Okay, like, right now, I want to be very, very positive about the story, and I'm not even trying to be positive, I just am positive. I think this was the peak of, like, descriptions, this entire part, about, like, the steel monster. The gore was, pretty good. It didn't go too far, because sometimes it feels like stories like this, especially back in creepypasta days, they try to overdo the gore so much, or the disgusting nature of the story, either with, like, gore or pedophilia or whatever other, like, taboos, that it gets, like, very stale. But I don't think it's happened here because of the, like, cosmic horror vibes that the entire realm that they're in gave. And also from the fact that it wasn't just the description of gore, it was also a great description of everything in general here. Just was great. So the whole part here, from the subterranean cave all the way down here to the end, I think that was like peak rising from this story, peak rising. Also, obviously, the amazing sentence of James's reality-altering EDM creation was blocked out by DMX. I'm gonna... Man, that's good. I should make that a quote on the channel. The Bushwick concert. That wasn't the first, Greg insisted. There've been others in South America, Ibiza. He keeps moving, keeps changing his name. He never allows himself to get too popular. It's always small shows, 30 people or less. Because if he were some big celebrity, he'd attract too much attention. Yeah. Fame would be anathema to a creature like DJ Erich Zann. Best to chip away slowly, a couple dozen doomed fans at a time. What did it mean? I asked Greg. The last thing he said to you. 995 more? Greg met my eyes. He knew. He knew I knew. That girl, he said. Her name was Devin Slade. She'd been an art student, recently aged out of foster care, and she wasn't his first either. What composure remained in Greg's face broke down. 4 other girls went missing around the same time. Over the next few years, the police found all of them buried in shallow graves on opposite ends of the country. They never connected the dead girls back to James, not officially. But, well, I did, because they'd been mauled. Their hearts torn out of their chests. Jeez. Now I'm thinking, by the way, a thought that came to my head. I'm betting that they described earlier the drawings on Erich Zann's advertisements. I'm like pretty much 100% sure now that the creature that he drew there was actually, no, I was gonna say that it was that fucking hamster creature, but no, absolutely not. It was a humanoid being, I think. So it must be the thing that attached himself to Erich Zann. Yeah, that must be it. Yeah. I thought I remembered it being like a dog, but I think it was a humanoid, like holding a hand of a child. And the child, well, obviously. Or, well, was it actually a little girl? Was it a little girl? Oh no. I don't remember anymore. I'm getting worried. Devin Slade is such a comic-ass name. I know. Damn, like... Ugh. I don't know. It might be a California name, you know? Like, it sounds like a name that people from, like, Florida or California would name their child, like rich-ass parents, you know? Who want to call their child, Kaylee, but it starts with a Q, and it has at least 15 letters, and the end is like GHEGHIEH or something like that. Greg's story ended there. Mine didn't. That night, the I'd killed the music. DJ Erich Zann's black automaton roadies melted into gelatinous black puddles. Heart stuck in my throat, stomach in knots. I eased over to a puddle. I extended a toe. Bump, bump, bump. The bass started up again. The puddles bubbled in time with music. Gummy arms popped out of the mess, pressed against the ground from torsos. I said no entry until 10. No! No, he's doing one-liners! No! No, he's doing one-liners! Fuck! I hate that! That is my least favorite thing in horror stories, except if it's like a fucking teen or something, but god damn it. Not a one-liner. I whirled away from the re-emerging humanoids and towards that grating robotic alien voice. My pulse pounded in my ears, beads of perspiration formed on my palms and the back of my neck, my neurons rejected my eyes, and I couldn't breathe. James Hadley, DJ Erich Zann, stood in front of me, shirtless and barefaced. His flesh, if you could call it flesh, alternated between metallic blue-black patches that refracted light and rotting dark green tissue that slowed, hanging off him, dripping foul-smelling liquid. Bits of his arm had disintegrated, revealing silver-stained muscles. He had no nose and no lips and no teeth, just gaping holes. He was bald, black mold extended across his scalp. His bulging eyes, cloudy white, stood out in bas relief. Bas relief? And though I couldn't see pupils, I felt fury laser focused on me. Footsteps behind me. His black putty roadies had stabilized, and they'd blocked all the exits. What saved my life that night was a combination of luck and the venue owner's carelessness. I'd bartended many events there, so I knew, behind the stage, a secret trapdoor and hidden staircase led to the basement. I knew the basement was accessible via another staircase that opened through cellar doors to the streets. And I knew the owners constantly forgot to lock said cellar doors. I ran, then walked and collapsed into a heap and cried. Then ran again, walked, cried, rinse and repeat, until I sank onto a bench along Eastern Parkway in Crown Heights, legs too numb to move. I should have, I realized then, called the police. The police would have thought I was high, I told myself, and even if they believed me, it wouldn't have made any difference. 29 people died at the concert. The youngest was 19, the oldest 51. They were students, baristas, poets, stockbrokers, teachers, biologists, taxi drivers, spouses and parents. Music lovers who'd only wanted to lose themselves for a night. Their loved ones were told they'd all died in an electrical fire due to rats biting through the wires. The press, outside of a few local outfits, didn't pay the incident much attention as I thought it deserved. Who cares about a few dead hipsters, right? But many people, family and friends, reporters, low-ranking cops and paramedics who'd seen the aftermath, weren't satisfied with the answers they were given. And as often happens when answers are scarce and higher-up shut down, certain individuals start asking questions a little louder. For instance, if all 29 victims died in a fire, why had autopsies revealed no smoke in their lungs? Why were the bodies they'd recovered in pieces? How had an electrical fire torn a limb from sockets of the force of an elephant or bitten into chests with jaws as wide as sharks? Why was every single recovered torso missing its heart? And as frustrated investigator asked, while showing me a photograph I'm sure he wasn't supposed to reveal, what was the meaning of the words written on the wall? I stared at the words, scrawled in jagged letters, as though by the nails of a broken and bleeding hand. 5 more. There we go! That was Don't Listen to the Music of DJ Erich Zann by Nicky XX, user Nicky XX, on Reddit. That is the first time that I've actually read a Reddit horror story on the channel. Interesting, yeah. Man, I did like the story. Let me start by saying that. Yeah, that's a great word from Kahvini. This was just a very fun story to read. It wasn't as it didn't left me feeling as empty, which I do like. As like for instance, last story that I read, Mayhem Mountain. It didn't leave me feeling as empty, but it was a very fun experience to read through. The descriptions were very good. Like I feel like the more descriptions of like these Lovecraftian like cosmic horror entities Nicky wrote, the better it got from her. Like, it's insane. Okay, let me get back to the story. Like, it's wild to me. If we get right to the back to the beginning here, it is wild to me that the same person who wrote the part right here, this thing, the person who wrote pitch black automaton shaped like naked featureless sex, this whole thing, the fact that like this was a well-written part, but I think it was like poorly set here. But the fact that she wrote this part and then later wrote all the other descriptions of like the first description of the universe that they went to, and especially the second one, like, god damn, what work. Really, really, really good descriptions there. It is a definite definite improvement in the stories. Also, this was written a while back. Actually, no. Oh, never mind. This was 2 months ago. Okay, never mind. I remember that this was a way older story. Sorry, yeah. Yeah, I think that she got way better and better at writing cosmic horror the further the story went. Maybe slightly in the end, I kinda started losing my, like, the story kinda lost me, or it didn't necessarily lose me completely, but it kinda like pulled me away from the situation with comedy, which can be a good thing. It's fine. I think it's good that the stories also have a comedic twist to them. But there were like parts like some of the DMX things were funny, but kind of like maybe pulled me away from the like, even though it's a real life thing that is described there, I don't believe that the person who experienced all those horrible things that is describing these things to the main character of the story, I don't believe that Greg would be so enamored with describing DMX and what he's playing there or whatever. That's kind of pulls me away from the story. I do like the part James's reality altering EDM creation was blocked out by DMX. DMX is still that is so stellar. You made the DMX meme thing. Yes, let's go. Did you put it there? Yes! This is something that can never be explained to people. Sorry, let me move that a bit so we can see it better. By the way, join Nachorror. If you're not a part of Nachorror, I wanna have more like this here. That's amazing. Empty can be good with horror, but I get what you mean. Yeah, exactly. Like, I didn't mean it at all. Like, not a negative description whatsoever. Yeah, not a negative thing. I prefer when a horror story leaves me feeling like very empty about what I've experienced. I always talk about this story, and I might read it eventually, but in that one I'm gonna have to warn people a bit maybe about it, but I do want to read Borrasca at some point after a while, because I think that it is very controversial and very like opinion. People have very different opinions about the story, but I think Borrasca is a perfect example of like just an S tier horror story online. I really love Borrasca. The worst part that kinda pulled me out was the damn one-liner here, even though it was a bit funny. This, the bass started, the paddle's gummy arms popped out, the mess pressed against the ground, formed torsos. I said no entry until 10. Like, fuck off. Nah. It's not the most horrible thing I've seen in stories like this. Like, there are way worse offenders when it comes to like writing that pulls me out of horror. But it was kind of like, it was one of the low points at the end of a story that was really good, so that might have been the reason why I kind of felt like, yeah, maybe that wasn't my favorite part. But yeah, a very nice little story. I'm very, very happy that I got to read this one. Very nice Lovecraftian story. Not perfect. I said my issues with it, obviously, but in general, I very highly enjoyed what I read there. So far, we're 2 stories in and neither of the stories has been dog shit. So technically our KD ratio is 2-0, which is very impressive as a beginner streamer. I just checked Nicole's page and Nicole only has like less than 1,000 post karma on Reddit, which is obviously a very small amount. The things she has written in here, she's been writing for a while, but I think she might have taken a break. Oh wait, yes, she does have a story that I've heard is very, very good that I will definitely read in the future. I did tell you guys that sadly I won't be able to read the story, The Burnt Photo. The Burnt Photo is a story that I will not be able to touch, but she has the story Briar Rose Drive, which is a big story. It is a 12-part story on Reddit, a continuous story that she wrote, I believe within a year's time on Reddit. So that could be a story that I might do as a first long story on this channel, maybe. Yeah, all good to Nicole. Once again, Nicole, Nicky XX. Great stuff.